All right, everyone, we good? Good afternoon. I'm joined today by Daniel Brownell, Commissioner of the New York City Business Integrity Commission, Chief Tommy Chan, Chief of Transportation, Assistant Chief Fausto Pichardo from the Chief of Patrol's Office, Inspector Walsh, and Captain Gallagher from the 19th Precinct. I'm going to give you a brief overview of this announcement. Afterwards, Chief Chan will provide some specific details, and then Commissioner Brownell will share some remarks. Today, the NYPD is taking aim at the private carton industry, an industry that has been operating recklessly in New York City and whose constant disregard for the law has proven fatal. Since 2014, the NYPD has been part of the Mayor's Vision Zero plan, a tremendous effort in partnership with several city agencies designed to drive down collision-related fatalities across the 5 boroughs. And progress has been significant, resulting in lives saved thanks to fewer fatal collisions. In fact, fatalities are down again once in 2018. There have been 24 fewer fatal collisions this year compared to last. That is a 13% decrease. In spite of these advances, one fatality is too many. And when we take a closer look at these collisions, their connection to the private carton industry is glaring. Since 2016, we attribute up to 20 fatalities to vehicles associated with this industry. These collisions often involve trucks not yielding to pedestrians and bicycles, traveling at excessive speeds, sometimes in the wrong direction, and running red lights. When you factor in faulty equipment, such as worn-out brakes, these 25-ton trucks become death traps. We did some spot checks a couple of weeks ago in Manhattan and the Bronx and found a staggering number of violations, which is why we have begun a week-long initiative to crack down on these fatal violations. Officers will be out enforcing any and all private sanitation violations they observe. Based on what we saw during our initial spot check, I expect there will be extensive enforcement by my cops. I also expect this type of enforcement will only be temporary. I say that because I expect the owners of these businesses will move quickly to ensure that not only their vehicles are brought up to code, but also that their drivers are properly trained in obeying the law. If they don't, they will face consequences. New York City is the safest big city in America. Crime continues to fall to historic lows, and we will not tolerate people getting killed while crossing the street, crushed by 50,000 pounds of metal bearing down on them. Thank you. Tom? Yep.
Good afternoon, Chief Monahan, Commissioner Brownell of the Business Integrity Commission. Private sanitation and carting is an integral part of keeping our city clean and clear of debris. It requires a daily presence on our city streets, and we have great respect for all the New York sanitation workers for the job they do. Nevertheless, for the safety of all New Yorkers, it's imperative that private sanitation industry follow the rules and the regulations properly. In 2016, we had 8 fatalities. 2017, we saw 8 fatalities involving private sanitation trucks and carters. This year, we have 4 fatalities year to date, for a total of 20 since 2016. Let me be clear, there is no number of acceptable fatalities on New York City streets. Through the focused enforcement efforts of our personnel from the Citywide Traffic Task Force, the Highway Motor Carrier Unit, members of patrol, the Strategic Response Group, we are working closely and significantly to improve the safety of all associated with this industry. This year, we have issued 1,826 summonses year to date, a 182% increase from 2017. This week, we have initiated a citywide private sanitation and carding enforcement initiative, working with our partners in the Business Integrity Commission. Common violations: disobeying red lights, backing up unsafely, defective equipment. It should be noted that serious equipment violations may result in a truck being placed out of service and possibly towed away by our uniformed personnel. The size, the height, the weight of a private sanitation vehicle, combined with the hours of operation, often dusk and darkness, can be a deadly combination to our walking, biking, and driving public. This initiative highlights our commitment to improving the safety of New York City streets. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Dan Brownell, Commissioner of the Business Integrity Commission. Thank you, Chief Monahan, Chief Chan, Captain Warraby, and the rest of the NYPD for organizing these roadside traffic safety operations with the goal of making New York City streets safer. BIC appreciates being part of this effort. The clear message for all truckers, especially those in the trade waste industry, is that these joint operations by law enforcement are going to continue. In fact, as the chief said, they're going to increase going forward. For truck drivers, if you're smart, you will assume that we in law enforcement are always out there. When you run a red light, we are watching. When you speed along city streets, when you go the wrong way on a one-way street, assume that we see you. When you ignore the rules, we will pull you over, fine you, and when appropriate, based on an inspection of your truck, take your truck out of service. The city has had enough of the bad and dangerous behavior by the trade waste industry. Far too many trade waste drivers are a threat to other motorists, cyclists, and pedestrians because of the reckless way that they operate. The result is too many crashes by trade waste trucks, often with serious injuries or fatalities for those affected. As the city's population has increased in the last few years and our streets have become more crowded with other vehicles, especially bicycles, truck drivers who break traffic rules can no longer be tolerated. We have had enough. The short-sighted view is that only the drivers bear the responsibility for this bad behavior. After all, they are the ones actually behind the wheel. The reality is that bad driving, especially when it's a pattern, is a clear indication of a deeper problem within the trade waste companies they work for. Too many companies in this industry have a business model that places profits and expediency over safety and responsible operation. The managers of these companies load up collection routes to save time and money. The result is that driver shifts are dangerously long, often violating what is allowed under federal DOT rules. The drivers are then far too fatigued to operate safely, and I'm not making excuses for what was observed, compounded by pressure from their bosses to complete their routes as fast as they can. For an industry that is inherently dangerous already, this reckless way of operating becomes a sure recipe for disaster, and then the statistics bear that out. Today's traffic safety operation is yet another signal to trade waste companies that this industry must significantly improve. You are on notice that city government is focused on you more than ever, and we will not stop until your operations are safer, more efficient for environmental purposes, and that your workers are treated more fairly. Thank you.
All right, questions? Miles.
I think those are the stats, yes. Well, BIC can always do more. I won't quarrel with that. BIC was originally created to root out corruption. In the last now 3.5 years, BIC has become more focused on safety as a part of Vision Zero. I've actually spoken out quite a bit about this in the City Council. We actually have a bill now that that the city and the administration and the council are discussing that would give BIC more authority over safety in the industry. So we are working and have been working to make this a safer industry. BIC is a small agency. It takes a lot of people to do this, including the NYPD. BIC has 11 investigators. We couldn't do any of this without the NYPD. We couldn't. We don't have the ability to do that. We don't have the manpower to do that. And so we're working, as I said, to get more regulatory authority and to get additional staff to be able to do that.
Yeah. The message is drive safely out there. Lives are at stake. When you talk almost 50 people since 2010, 20 since 2016, one fatality is too many. Your reckless driving can end someone's life. Think of the lives that you're ending. They're running red lights, backing unsafely through intersections. We've looked at their equipment, and there's a lot of violations in the equipment, making these trucks unsafe to drive, and that's what Chief Chan and his personnel are going to be working on.
How many over what period of time? The way that BIC's regulatory authority is structured at this point, the means, the basis that we have to do that is mainly integrity issues. One of the main aspects of the bill currently being discussed with the council is that the Business Integrity Commission can consider safety issues in our licensing decisions, which is a major change and increase in our authority. We currently have one company that's under emergency suspension that has a monitor up in the Bronx, and we're looking to do more of that. As I said, the industry has to change. One of the things that we hear in our conversations with carters is that often when they're out there in the streets, it's pedestrians that aren't paying attention and cyclists that aren't paying attention. And I'm not saying that that doesn't happen, but these kinds of things are not that. When a trade waste driver runs a red light, when they speed, when they go the wrong way on a one-way street, that is nobody's fault but their own. And that's the kind of things that lead to these crashes that have to be stopped. Those are things that the trade waste industry themselves and their drivers can stop.
Hold a second. One.
Say that again? I think that's probably more a PD question.
Again, as we look at fatalities in the city and we drill down on where it's coming from, we see it more and more from this private cotton industry. And this is something, as we set out in the 19th precinct, the captain here went out, saw the issues out there, and it really came into focus. So this is something that we have to focus on. And we're working hand in hand with BIC. This is now a joint effort so that we can understand which of the companies that are causing most of these problems. We're going to let them know what our enforcement is and then see what steps they can take against the companies.
I was hoping you wouldn't ask me about stats. So Sal, I can't read lips. So there are more than 7,000 trucks out on the road. Now they're not all garbage companies. Some of these are C&D companies, construction debris and other things. There are approximately, I think, about 120 companies that pick up commercial garbage. Many more pick up construction debris around the city. So it's a lot of trucks.
Our personnel, again, this is going to be a citywide initiative going out throughout all the 5 boroughs. Our officers will be working closely with BIC and also with our patrol officers. If we come across a particular vehicle, they're identified that needs additional inspections and things of that nature, we will inspect the vehicle, and some vehicles will be placed out of service. Again, equipment violations, certainly defective brakes and things of that nature. If a vehicle has defective brakes, the hydraulics leaking, things of that nature, that vehicle is highly likely to be put out of service and be towed from the location. Some other equipment violations may not rise to that level, but nevertheless, we will be looking at inspections, and our motor carrier people will be our specialists that will be supplementing and assisting our patrol officers out there to doing the enforcement.
Yeah, no, I got it right there.
You said that there were over 1,000 violations this year. Do you know that that is specifically for these types of vehicles, or was that just violations in general? And then also, are you going to be having, whoever wants to complete this one, are you going to be having checkpoints?
We've issued over 1,800 summonses this year. It goes to the private sanitation and carting, so that very well can include a dump truck and things of that nature. But what happened is that our officers will be out on patrol and also taking a look at certain locations where they may see more activity of these vehicles. So they'll be out there doing enforcement, and again, we expect them to follow the rules of the road. Nevertheless, this is something that we will talk about at Traffic Stat and continue to talk about and focus our attention. So while this initiative is for this week, we can expect to see continued enforcement in this area.
Again, there won't be a checkpoint, but there will be a car in every command over the city that is going to be targeted and looking at the private carting industry. Ed Marshall.
Again, what happened is that vehicles, the placing of them out of service is one thing when the vehicle itself has to be re-inspected and have a corrected condition. The other area is that when an operator receives a B summons, a moving violation, when you get 11 points on your license, where you're found guilty by the Department of Motor Vehicles, you can have your license suspended and things of that nature. So any driver out there is responsible as a motor vehicle operator and is subject to suspension if they do not follow the rules of the road. Any driver that accumulates summonses and points on their license can lose their livelihood and also their ability to operate legally on our roads.
No, it's. Oh, you're mixing up. No. I mean, not being critical on my part. You're mixing up a couple different things, but that's okay. That had to do with the commercial waste zone structure that hopefully will be going into place. It has to get through the council first, but hopefully will be going into place in 3 or 4 years. BIC definitely has, in fact, we are exercising some authority. The purpose of this bill is to really make it clear and expand our ability to do particular things with regard to safety. Because again, when the Trade Waste Commission, which is what BIC was first created, it was the result of a series of criminal investigations that the Manhattan DA's office did to expose what law enforcement had known for decades was that organized crime controlled the whole industry. And so BIC is evolving with the times, so to speak. Last night,
How many guys stopped
We issued
Good.
47 violations were issued on the night that the 19th precinct conducted their operation for different infractions like red lights, backing unsafely, blocking roadways, and those type of violations.
So companies that operate in this industry have to get a license. We only license the companies, not the drivers. The drivers have to be disclosed to us. Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. We will then do a background check on them. And quite frankly, at this particular point, the focus is more on safety than anything else. They need a CDL, commercial driver's license. There are different classifications depending on the size of the trucks that they operate, and of course that's issued through New York State Department of Motor Vehicle. Driving history is a part of it. Again, the bill that I've talked about very much expands our ability to do various things with regard to driving histories. So that would be the main focus.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.